Hi everyone. So today we're going to do a little bit of a facility tour of the ERL. My hope is to go into maybe some more detail than you've typically seen if you've been out here. Okay, I want you to start to do kind of a facilities assessment of places like the ERL, the equine center, the barn your horse is at, place you have at home. And look at it again from more of an in-depth look. Is it a place that you'd want to own and manage, keep things the way they are, change certain things? And so we're going to look at everything from a stall size to the layout of that, where's the lighting, where's the waters, where's the shavings, where's the hay, etc., and kind of see what you guys think. And so always a good way to start off, especially as we start to lead into discussions on kind of site plans, barn layouts, look again kind of how things are laid out and what we think. And so I'm over here at the ERL. I'm going to jump around mostly the barn, just a little breezy out. We might walk to a few kind of outside sites, look at the stallion runs, look at what atro is as well, but most of our time is going to be spent in some of these barns and structures. Okay, now kind of a cool virtual tour that I've got here for you today. So we're doing this kind of in a 360 video, so I'll kind of point you in the initial direction, but I want you then to take your time with either your finger on your phone or tablet or your mouse, and you guys can move all around and kind of look at the scene and evaluate that stall or that barn for yourself. Okay, you can do that right now and go all the way around in a circle, whatever you might like. Okay, and so that being said, let's start to look at this barn in a little more detail. So this is what we refer to as E-barn. This is the oldest barn that sits out here at the ERL, and probably the one that sits in a little more disrepair than some others. Next one to be replaced. But what are some initial thoughts of this barn? Okay, and so I'm just going to walk around a little bit with you guys, and then you can again start to go around on your own. But the first things, as you look down kind of the aisle, they've got a car stored in here at the moment, but what do you see on the floor? We've got asphalt. I'm perfectly fine with the asphalt on the floor, much better than, say, dirt on the aisles. Okay, asphalt, brushed concrete, both are acceptable. What's something else you notice if you kind of look down these aisles? There's no storage, right? And so realize each facility is going to be a little bit specific to their purposes. This is a reproductive facility, so there's no tack rooms. There's not much in the way of a feed room, you'll see. There's no arena to ride in, nothing like that. It's strictly barns and clinic space, okay? But as you look down these barns, it's not to say you couldn't have some storage. And so because a lot of these barns lack storage, you'll see these big structures sitting in the center of the barn, in the aisleway, that start to take up some space to be able to store various items. This is kind of a modular style barn that you see. It's been here for a while. And you can see a number of stalls throughout, just sliding doors. I like the sliding doors. They don't take space into the aisleway. If you want to drive a truck down them or a skid steer down them to clean, you don't have to worry about opening up that stall door. Sliding doors are, again, quite nice. Above the aisle, we've got nice kind of fluorescent lights. Decent light above the aisle. I'd probably change those to kind of a longer one. Big fluorescent lights like this, if you start to pan up to the ceiling and look at those in a little more detail, they're meant to be 16, 17, 18 feet in the air. When they're at a pretty low height like they are now, that light doesn't disperse nearly as well. So we could go to something like a 4 or 6 foot fluorescent light and probably be in a little bit better shape. Let's start to look at some of these stalls. And so I'm going to take you over to one of the stalls, and now you're sitting in it. I want you to kind of pan around a little bit and look and tell me what you think, okay? And so what's your initial impressions of this stall? Okay, take a second, kind of look around. Okay, so again, modular style stall. It's all a steel wall, if you will. Okay, I like that from the aspect of it's easily cleaned and disinfected. You can see that Nelson water sitting there in the corner. I like Nelson waters. They're great water. There's a balance valve mechanism in there as compared to a typical float that's in many waters. And they've got a stainless steel bowl in them that can be taken out and cleaned altogether. We'll show you that in more detail when we discuss some plumbing and various waters on our own. Okay. You see the feed up here at the front in the corner, so easy enough to open that stall door, dump feed inside that kind of corner feeder there. You've got a hay storage area just above that. Now there's no access door from the outside. You'll see some of our barns where that becomes pretty nice and easy. You've got essentially a little trap door that you can open up, dump the grain in, dump the hay in, and you don't actually have to even enter the stall. These you still have to enter into that stall. Pan down and look at the floor a little bit, okay? And so if if you look at the floor, it does have rubber mats. I really do like rubber mats. They're good for traction. They're good for cushion a little bit for the horses. These don't fit so great though, okay? They've got upwards of 2 inches gap between them, so they've all filled with dirt, and you get a little bit of some mountains and valleys throughout. So I'd like to see a better base under some of these mats, okay? And so we can walk outside and look at our runs. And as we look at the runs, again, you can see nothing too fancy or special here. We've got, again, just our steel tubing. And so perfectly safe, good height to our runs. A lot of times we've gone through and stuck 2x4s or 2x6s or 2x8s depending on the depth at the bottom of these runs, just to keep that sand from floating from one side to the other and kind of retain it a little bit. But they've got good usable space to go from inside the stall to outside the run. Of course, those doors can be closed, and you can keep them inside at night, turn them out during the day, whatever. So, okay. I do like, as we back up just a little bit, I do like having a door that is a Dutch door to the outside. It allows you to open up maybe just the top. Horse can stick their head over the top of that door, look outside, lets in a little bit more light and fresh air. And so I really do like that aspect of things, okay? This is just a single solid door. It would just slide and cover the opening. If we did move that right now, and you guys got to see that, okay, you can see that it is, again, just a single door that slides, and it's actually got some bars on it to still let in some light and some of that airflow, okay? The last thing we really didn't talk about inside this space is lighting, okay? Something I want you to look at in every stall. Of course, it's off right now, but look around a little bit, look up to the ceiling, okay? What do you think, okay? We'll compare this to many other different facilities. It's a single small light at the top, okay? It's going to do okay, okay? You're going to see the equine center, it's got a single light bulb in the front corner. Kind of sucks, okay? And so you want something that's probably a 4 or 6 foot fluorescent LED, somewhere in that sorts, light that's sitting in the center of the stall. So we're starting off in a good spot. We're in the center, just could be probably a little bit bigger, but we want something that's going to give us ample light throughout, okay? And so that's kind of your initial impressions of this barn. We got automatic waters, we got our feed storage, modular stall. Needs some improvements, but okay. Generally safe stall, plenty of headroom in them, etc. Okay. And so now, kind of looking down this barn again, you can see again just a number of stalls, little blanket racks on the outside, a pretty manageable barn. Okay. So let's start to compare this to some others. We're going to walk out of here, and then we're going to walk over to Marvine Barn, and we'll kind of see what you guys think from there. Okay. Just going to close this stall door. Okay. Let's walk over to Marvine. You can see Marvine from the outside, kind of has this monitor style roof, runs on the outside. Monitor style basically just means that center portion is raised, and you get windows on each side that naturally gives you a little bit of light that's coming in, okay? And so nice sliding barn doors on the outside. One thing I'll tell you that I like right off the bat is this barn door is open, but we'll open this and then show you and then back up. But I like when they put a man door inside the slider, okay? Great on cold, windy days. You just want to go into the barn. You're not taking a horse in or out. Horses are always going to come in and out when you have the big sliders open. But it's really nice to sometimes be able to put a smaller man door inside that sliding door, okay? This one's pretty well built. And so let's go inside this barn and kind of see what you guys think on your initial impressions, okay? And so we're inside Marvine Barn now at the ERL. Take a moment, kind of pan around a little bit on your own. Tell me what you guys think, okay? How does this compare to the previous E-Barn? What are some things that are better? Same? Anything worse? So, right off the bat, we've got the same asphalt floor, okay, if you kind of look down to that. I do like that, fan of that. Now, again, you can see they're lacking storage, okay? They got all of these bins kind of taking up aisle space throughout, okay? And so I'd much rather have dedicated one stall as a storage stall and then clean up this aisle and not have all these plastic bins of different sizes sitting all around, okay? I like these stalls. They're grates on them. Again, good stall sliders. Very easy to be able to open and close. Again, they're not swinging out into the aisle at all. They got ceiling fans up above, and then we've got lights in the aisle as well. And so I've kicked those lights on there for you now. I like these above the aisle a little bit more than I do those previous fluorescent lights. Again, those previous ones, they're meant to be a lot higher. They don't diffuse properly. Here you've got some 8-foot fluorescent lights that are, again, stacked on top of each other more or less and covering that entire ceiling. You also see some nice ceiling fans up there to be able to circulate some air, especially in the summertime. Okay? You guys can pan over and look yourselves, but we've got a mare and a foal sitting in one stall right now with little infrared heaters that can be on a thermostat. And so that's especially nice as we pull out in the early months of the year, especially here in Colorado. Okay. And so what else do you notice? Let's start to look at one stall in a little more detail. Okay. And so that previous stall, I didn't tell you, but in E-Barn, that previous stall was about a 12 by 12 stall. Okay. What do you think of this? Start to look around it a little bit more yourself. Okay, bigger stall, a lot more light in it, okay? And so bigger stall, this is probably a 12 by 14 or 12 by 16 stall. Definitely meets our minimum. Still have your kind of modular panels, but I like your steel walls. They're still easily cleaned and disinfected. What else? We've got one nice large fluorescent light that sits right above the center. And so lighting in the stall is much better here than it was, say, in E-Barn. Okay. What else? So you look over and pan, and basically you guys can see what your feeder looks like in the corner. Nothing fancy. This one you still have to go into the stall to be able to feed. You just have, again, a simple bin for your grain and throw a couple flakes of hay in there if you want, or you could throw it on the ground. Okay. The other thing that, if I orient you maybe a little bit better where you guys can pan around, is where's your water? Okay. So water is in the opposite corner up front. Okay. Generally, I would recommend don't put your feed and your water in the same corner, right? In terms of a stall layout and design, horses are naturally going to take that feed or take that hay, dunk it, drop it in the water, and it's just going to make for a constant mess that you're cleaning them out all the time. This is just a plastic one. If I get a little closer, you guys can always move and pan down. And it's basically just a float system in there. Nothing fancy, but man, it is sure nice to have automatic waters in those stalls. Okay. What else do you notice? You can look at both walls inside this stall. Pan from one wall to the other, maybe. Okay. One wall has grates where all of a sudden the horse can then see the horse beside it and have a little bit of interaction. Okay. The other wall that's sitting behind me is completely solid. I really do like a lot of barns that do some different stall wall types. Okay, you might do 4 stalls that have grates between them that allow for some horse-to-horse interaction. Some horses are really nervous being in stalls, but if they've got grates, man, they'll stand right there next to their buddy all day and they're perfectly content. Okay, other horses, they're going to constantly fight with that neighbor. Maybe they're getting fed, maybe they've got a foal, who knows what, but they're just going to constantly fight if they can see their neighbor. And so that solid wall is great, but I really do like the option. Okay, and so if you're going to build a new barn, build, 4 stalls out of that 12-stall barn that have grates between them, and then the rest of them kind of solid walls. But I do like a mixture. Now, if you look at the stall door that's essentially going out to the run, now you notice a similar fashion, but solid on the bottom, grates on top, but it's got plexiglass. So now we can close this barn off a little bit more than you could that E-Barn. Okay, E-Barn just had the slats. But now you could add plexiglass, but it was always going to be drafty, especially in the winter months. This one can be closed off a little bit better where you don't have that draft coming through, but you still let some light in through those grates. Okay. The outside runs here nearly identical to Marvine, sand, tubular steel, and then they've got the 2x6s or 2x8s that they've installed to, again, keep the sand inside that that run. And so we can come over here and easily look to see what that looks like. Okay. And so this side they actually haven't installed the 2x6s, 2x8s on, but I did see it on the other side of the barn as we enter. Okay. So pretty easy runs, but horses can go out during the day. Okay. And so with that, let's start to walk back out of this barn. And again, any other thoughts that maybe you guys have as you look at this barn? Again, it's pretty nicely laid out. I like the monitor style roof. If you kind of look up to the ceiling, all those windows are because that center part of the roof extends higher than the other roof line. Okay, that's what we mean by monitor style. So all those little windows up there let in a lot more natural light. I really want a barn that has a lot of natural light, inviting to a horse. You don't want to bring your horse into this dark hole. I oftentimes don't want to go into that dark hole. Okay, and so I really do like the layout of that. My big thing in here would be something as a kind of a storage means, but we got automatic waters, we got very good light in here, we got some circulation, we got some infrared heaters. Again, overall, I like the style of this barn. And so With that, I'm going to walk out of here and take you over to Mare Motel and Atro, and we'll talk through those right there. So I've got you outside here, and just want to show you a couple of things before I take you exactly over to Atro and Mare Motel. Again, you can see Marvine as you kind of pan around the outside of it. Again, nice cupolas on top of that barn can help with some ventilation. The windows on top of that monitor style roof. Now pan around and look over at what's on this side of me, and you'll see a shavings pit, okay? That shavings pit is great for the ERL. It serves all of the stalls, anything over here on this facility. What the downside to that is that's also the shavings for the equine center, way over behind me, okay? How did I get from here over to the equine center? One bucket load at a time on a loader. So probably not the most efficient practice or use of time. You're paying somebody an hourly rate, one bucket at a time to take from here to go load the breezeways over in the Adams barn. And so things like that could definitely be improved on. Shavings are always going to either be bulk like this, or they're going to be a bagged shavings product. The bulk usually a little bit cheaper, but you're going to have a little bit more of an inconsistent product as compared to a bagged shavings. But all the shavings for the entire premise stored right here, comes in on a semi. Again, the paint is bringing it from here over to the equine center. One thing you need to ask yourself is, what is the efficiency of stall cleaning? What does that look like, okay? Just to give you an idea, you've seen two barns now, but when they clean stalls, they clean all the stalls into a wheelbarrow. Wheelbarrow is then dumped into the bucket of a skid steer. Bucket of the skid steer is then driven over, dumped into a dump trailer. Dump trailer is then filled up and then driven a couple miles up north to a storage facility where all that manure is dumped. That's a pretty inefficient process, okay? I'd much rather cut a few of those steps out sometimes. They get it all done, but again, it takes a lot more time. So I'd rather be cleaning directly into a manure spreader or a truck, and then a short drive maybe in the corner of your property where you have that manure storage, okay? So again, remember, efficiency is money, okay? And so if we look off to the northwest, you're going to see a whole bunch of runs. That's Atro, and then we're going to walk over to Mare Motel. And so let's go take a gander at those. And so, again, you don't have any tack rooms around this facility. Again, it's just simply reproductive clinics. This is what one of the clinic bases is that says West ANEQ off to the left of me. Okay. And so we walk over to what they call now the Westmare Barn. We used to call it Atro. And this has changed quite a bit from what it used to look like. We used to house our stallions here. And now it handles a handful of recipient mares, maybe some occasional clients, but all that was previously here was torn out and redone, okay? And so now they're quite nice pipe runs, all very well constructed, good sturdy fence, nice tall fence. Look around a little bit more on the camera and kind of see what you guys think. I like the sheds and the shelters. If you can see behind a little bit, there's an alley that runs all the way behind those kind of overhangs or stalls right there, if you will. And you can then drive a truck down to be able to feed and throw hay into each of those. They got a little grain bin and hay bin up at the front. And so very easy access to all that come feeding time, okay? Just simply sand in the runs has to be replaced every so often. The one kind of goof in building these is that the gates were not built wide enough, realizing after the fact that you can't get a skid steer in here to then be able to clean these pits, okay? And so in hindsight, we should have had the gates built a little bit bigger, but it works for the current situation. Okay. Every one of these now has an automatic water. These are jug automatic waters, sitting in the essentially shared between two runs, sitting in that kind of center space there. Jugs utilize a float valve, good durable water heating element inside them. They're going to withstand the Colorado winter just fine. And so again, good usable run space that you can put a lot of horses in. We used to have stallions in here. The stallions found their own hierarchy. They did just fine side by side in the pens, but you can house a lot of recibs, client mares, whatever that may be, because they have a lot of horses here. At any given time, we used to have maybe 300 horses on site. Okay, so again, you look around here and you got a good, nice roof structure, protect your horses from the elements. One thing you got to remember when you look at all these barns and you kind of pan around and look at what's around me right now, the winds come mainly, the prevailing winds in Colorado here and where we're at come from the northwest, okay? And so that means most of your barns are going to be perpendicular to that, okay? You look at these barn aisles here, E-Barn, Marvine, and all of those, and the barn aisles are running, what? east and west, okay? Most of your winds are coming out of the north, maybe northwest, okay? So then all of your run-in sheds and whatnot are usually facing south or southeast. These are facing east, but again, you generally don't want to face things into your prevailing winds, okay? And so, again, good solid runs that we have here. So hopefully you're making your assessment of the place. We're walking towards what we used to refer to as Mare Motel and C&D Row. Now they call Central Mare Barn. Two garage doors here, basically just a space with a lot of stalls in it, okay? Again, they're housing a lot of mares. The majority of these mares are all clients. They only have a couple that they would own, maybe an over-optimized mare or two, okay? And so as we enter this space, okay, you guys can now take a moment and start to look around this space a little bit and tell me what you think, okay? And so as you look around this barn, you see a lot of stalls, big open structure. It's actually open, if you can tell, on the south side. You guys can see daylight over there because, again, not too much wind coming from that south side. So they basically put sides on 3 of them and left 1 open, okay? And so you've got this barn aisle, and then it basically makes an H in the style of the barn. And then you've got 1 more aisle on the south side, and then it's open here in the center, so that you can walk horses from one side to the other, okay? You've got a set of 3 stocks that if you need to examine a horse out here in the barn, we've occasionally done that. You can put them in that set of stocks and do an examination on them, okay? But just a lot of stalls, okay? And so you look at these stalls, they're still modular in nature. Stall door slides. Again, I like that much better than opening up into the aisle. What do you not notice about aisle floor? What is it? Asphalt, okay? I really do like the asphalt much better than a clay and a dirt. We've replaced some of those in our barns with, again, a asphalt or potentially a concrete. Make sure it's a brushed concrete. What do you notice for lighting in the ceiling? You've got some fluorescent lights straight above the aisles, then you got large fluorescents that are pretty high in the ceiling, and they diffuse well when they're that high. And so you have a good amount of light in these stalls all throughout the night, okay? Let's walk into one of these stalls just so you can kind of get your bearings and tell me what you think, okay? So we'll open this one up a little bit more, okay? And so pan around, look around a little bit, see what you think. Okay, and so automatic water, this one sits in the back corner, okay, and shared between 2 stalls, okay. So that's fine, we utilize that, not too many issues from a biosecurity standpoint, though you do have some clients, you realize they are going to be sharing water, but they're already nose to nose, so it's not much difference besides the fact that they're going to share water, okay. You've got hay and grain that are up at the front, you guys can pan around and look at that. Now, because of the open slats, you can usually just reach through, dump the grain in, and then throw the hay over the top, or you could enter the stall, whichever you see fit, okay? Now, is there much separation, though, between these stalls? No, not so much at all, okay? And so here we run into issues because there is no separation. All it is a very low solid wall and then upper railings. And so we get a lot of horses and a lot of mares that don't get along and are biting at each other, kicking at each other. You can see all kinds of kick marks all over the back stall wall because of just that, okay? And so again, really is nice to have a barn that's probably majority solid walls and maybe a few that are just grates that allow that contact and interaction, socialization from one stall to the next, okay? And I will show you, if we go over to our mare, or a couple mare stalls where they oftentimes full out, that's oftentimes the case, okay? And we'll just walk by quickly again, but you guys can see now, if you panned over, that again, there's some plywood there, and if you looked at that plywood, again, you could see the fact that there's no interaction from one to the other, okay? And so with that, we'll walk out of this barn, and we'll walk over to our next barn, okay? And so we're out of our Mare Motel, and we're going to walk over to the newest barn that sits on this premise, which is their Adams Barn, okay? It used to be called B Barn. So the one structure you see to the left of me is essentially a classroom. They've got a grad office in there, and they've also got an intern apartment for people that live on site. So let's look now at this barn from the outside. Very similar to Marvine, okay? And so here we have a monitor style roof, cupolas on top, runs on the outside. You can see the traditional barn and setup that they really do like, okay? Now, the newest barns, hopefully we're impressed with some of the features. Let's go see what you guys think. After this mare barn, we're done with mare barns, we'll walk over and we'll show you the Stallion Barn, okay? And so now we're entering this space, okay? And so again, I already told you this is the newest barn on this premise, okay? And so as we initially kind of take a gander around, what are some of your thoughts on this barn? Look around. I like the white. White reflects very, very well, and so you get a lot of light that is let in and then reflects and ends up being a pretty bright barn. Again, they built a brand new barn, but there's no storage, okay? So again, you get all of these plastic bins sitting in the aisles, okay? And so I really would like a designated storage area really to just clean up the aisles. Also not a huge fan if you pan over a little bit to the left of where they put this yard hydrant in the center, okay? They really took up a lot of area, put a huge bollard in the center. Probably a lot of other ways you could have done that didn't kind of detract from your stall, okay? Or from your aisle altogether, okay? Lighting in the center, very high LED or fluorescent lights, works out very, very well. You get plenty of light above the middle of the barn. And then let's look at the stalls. And so I'll pivot you here, even though you guys can move the camera around, and look at the outside of your stalls. Okay, what do you think? Okay, and so I really do like these stalls. Okay, they're good. It's again modular barn because it's cost effective. Okay, and so again, they're more about functionality here at the ERL than they are anything else. Okay, and so you look at this barn. Now, outside of each one of these stalls, as you start to pan around, you can see there are electrical outlets like that. If we need to run a fan or anything like that, we have power. Okay, so that's a big plus. They afterwards put a few little blanket storage things on the outside of the stall door. What do you notice on the right side of it? Okay, you see a little trap door, more or less, that you can open up and then access the hay and grain. And so I'll take you over and we can do just that. And so now you can see you can access where you throw hay, and then right below that is a little feeder for your grain. Okay, and so I really do appreciate that inside these stalls. Now if we open one up, these are a pull down and then still a slide. Okay, and so again, I like that over opening up into the stall aisle. You already probably noticed, stall aisle, also asphalt. Asphalt is a good bit cheaper than concrete, and so that's why we oftentimes stuck to that, but either one of those is pretty appropriate, okay? Let's walk into this stall. You guys can have a look-see around, okay? And so now we're inside this stall. Lights are off, but it's actually not too bad in here. But lighting above, even if you look up at the ceiling, you've got plenty of light up there, okay? You got one large, huge LED light sitting above the center of the stall. Plenty of light, more than you need, okay? You want to come in here, give a injection at night of some sort, you can absolutely see your horse and do that safely, okay? You'll see a contrast to that at the equine center next week, okay? Here's that little grain feeder. Again, all can be accessed from that little trap door. Where's your water? Back corner, okay? And so these are a jug corner water that you have inside these stalls, okay? Float system inside the jug, pretty durable. They've also got a heating element in them so they don't freeze over the winter. Again, I like it as long as it's in the opposite corner or a different corner than our hay and our grain. Opposite corner works out pretty well. Now, the back door is closed to the runs. You saw the runs as we approached this barn, but they are just a Dutch door. I really do like this Dutch door because the top can be opened and pinned back. Horses can be still inside the stall, but they can then stick their head out, get some air, and kind of enjoy a little bit of freedom in that sense. Or you can open both doors, let them out into their run to enjoy the entire space. You can also close them in at night, okay? Oftentimes, we start, December 1st, putting mares under lights if they're here. And obviously, if we're going to do that, we need to make sure they're locked up in their stalls, okay? If they're out on their runs at night and we have these lights on right here to kind of change that artificial photo period, it's not going to do much good if they're sitting outside all day. So we can bring them in, they've got ample light, lock those two doors, and we're good to go, okay? This one, very nice, tall, solid walls on both sides, easily cleaned, easily disinfected. These are a rubber mat that have a really good base under them. You can see they've already got shavings here, so it's kind of tough to see those rubber mats. But again, I really do like the layout of these. When you came in, it's tough to notice, but I'll maybe try to point it out on the way back out. But a couple of these stalls will have grates between them to allow for that interaction from one to the other, okay? We can enter this stall right here to show you just that, okay? And so here, pan around this stall, kind of look, you can see solid wall on the right, and then on the left, that stall wall basically has those grates between, and you have a horse-to-horse interaction. Again, a lot of horses really do enjoy that, okay? And they'll stand right there next to the neighbor their entire time, makes them much less stressed. And so again, I like a variation of both throughout. And so overall, thoughts of this barn, what do you think? Okay, I really do like it. Good barn, well laid out. A lot of stalls. My biggest thing is storage in that middle aisle, as well as that hydrant. I don't like where the bollard's at, but you got lots of light in here. Good airflow. I like the outside doors. Again, very, very well laid out. Okay, and so with that, I'm going to take you over, show you where they store their feed, and then I'm going to pop you over to our Stallion Barn and walk you around the Stallion Barn and the layout of their runs. Okay, just to kind of wrap up our tour of the ERL. So with that, let's walk over to their feed storage area. Okay, so I've got you outside of Adam's barn here, and you start to see this little storage shed, right? What the heck is this, okay? Well, this little storage shed is all of their feed storage for the entire ERL. Now, how many barns did you see? You saw E-Barn and Marvine, and what was Hotel and Adam's barn, and all of these different spaces, okay? I would like to have maybe a feed area in each one of those barns, or also have you know, a centralized location. And so they've got all their buckets that are stored in here. They've got kind of some tools, random things, salt blocks, mineral blocks. And then there's another one of these storage sheds across the road that has all of the additional grain in it from there, okay? But there's no centralized feed room on the entire property, okay? And so I would like to see a particular feed room. And that also notes, in terms of where the hay storage is also across the road, and you would see all of that, okay? And so it takes a little bit. We store a lot of small squares over there, large squares over there, and again, all put on trucks and then brought over to the ERL and then fed in those stalls, okay? And so a little bit of a hassle, but I do like the fact that it's not stored in the barns, okay? Hay and shavings should not be stored in the barn, okay? They are something that is a combustible in the sense, or will burn, and so again, you're just having kindling inside your barn should you ever have an accident, okay? And so basically we don't have any ignition source. And so here again you can see the outside of Adam's barn. Very good looking barn. Again, runs on the outside. They've got all the 2x10s or 2x12s between each run to basically keep that sand from floating from one run to the next, and overall a good layout. Okay, and so with that, let's walk over. You guys can pan around, but let's walk over to the Stallion Barn, and I'll show you around that as well as their outside runs. Okay, so we walk over to the Stallion Barn. I'll stop momentarily just in the kind of central location right here. You can pan all the way around 360 degrees if you'd like. You can see Marvine Barn straight ahead just to get some orientation. E-Barn to the left. Right next to that, kind of in front a little bit, is the old collection shed. We've got our kind of central mare barn here. Behind me is the main reproduction lab. We've got our intern apartment, grad office, classroom sitting over here, and then we've got our Adams barn right here. And so this is kind of that centralized location. Asphalt all over in between. Really, again, good, doesn't get muddy throughout the year. You can see fire hydrant sitting there, always a good thing in terms of knowing where that's at. And so, again, one of those things when you're talking about layout now, the asphalt can get pretty slick sometimes. You got to worry about runoff, ice, snow. And so when you've got various horses on a property, again, one of those things, making sure you clear that snow, get some ice melt down, etc. Okay, and so again, well laid out. I do like the asphalt throughout. That fire hydrant that wasn't previously there, but ERL had a fire a number of years ago that burned the main lab down here, pretty much down to the ground, and fire department really had tough access with no water source that was around. And so that's something you do have to think about, is where are you going to pull water from, okay? And so now we're walking over to the Stallion Barn, and what's your initial impressions, okay? Now, you see nice big, cool, pretty cupolas on top, and this is what? A masonry or stone barn, okay? And it is surrounded by a number of runs for these stallions. And so let's walk into the barn first. We'll give our initial impressions of the barn aisle and the stalls, and then I'll walk out to just one of the runs, and we'll kind of show you maybe some things that are pros and cons to that. so as we approach this, again, we've got nice, big, huge, heavy steel sliding doors. Some sliders work out better than others. Some are really tough to open and close. These are actually pretty high quality, so pretty easy to be able to open those up, okay? And so from here, let's go ahead and kick some lights on in here. Okay, so we've got our lights on in the barn now. What do you think? Gosh, it didn't change a whole lot, okay? Now, pros and cons to this. I like the barn construction in terms of the masonry, okay? Big high ceilings in here, but it's not adequate light, okay? They've kind of done a drop ceiling in here. They had a huge problem with pigeons. And so to get rid of the pigeons in here, they put a drop ceiling in. You get all these plastic covers that get all dirty, and again, not very much light is coming through. I'd much rather have some large fluorescent lights that sat below that drop ceiling that really provided adequate light above the center aisle, as well as above these stalls, because it's the same style above the stalls if you pan around and look at that, okay? What's the the barn aisle made out of? Why don't you pan down and look? So that barn aisle, if you can tell, is basically a rubber brick that is interlocking. I really do like these rubber bricks. So one of my favorite options for a barn aisle are these rubber bricks like this that interlock, or asphalt, or brushed concrete, okay? Making sure it's brushed, not completely floated smooth, so you do have some traction to it. But these interlocking bricks really do stay in place. Water, if you hose them down, percolates down through it, and then follows the underlying base and drains appropriately, okay? I'm not a huge fan of rubber mats and aisle. They will shift. They're going to end up all over the place, but these interlocking bricks, they stay put pretty well, okay? You can see a number of stalls throughout, and so again, they're all sliding. I like that. They don't open up into the center of the aisle. You can see kind of a little pull-down trap door if you pan around. And those little trap doors open up so you can access that hay feeder and grain feeder inside, and be able to just put something in during feeding time rather than enter the stall. They've already got a more permanent blanket storage rack outside the stall. You can see they did a horseshoe and a solid rod. Again, a little bit better than just the rope that's on some of the others. So again, well thought out there. Let's enter one of these stalls and then see what you guys think from there, okay? And so now you're inside one of these stalls. Now light's not on above, but it's still not the adequate light. I'd rather have, again, a large LED fluorescent, much like you just saw in Adam's barn. These, what are supposed to be transparent and clear, covers over these drop ceiling lights. Again, they get completely gross, dirty, and again, they start to cut down on the amount of light that's present, okay? And so what are your initial impressions of the stall? Again, you've got two shutters that can open up and let some natural light in, but they've got plexiglass on them, so they're not going to let much airflow in. So not much in the way of ventilation, but they will let some natural light, a big component of natural light, okay? In the front corner, you can see where that grain feeder was. Not really actually much place for hay. That hay can just be thrown on the ground in the corner there. What's in the back corner? That's your Nelson water, okay? Again, completely fine with those Nelsons. I really do like those Nelson waters. Stainless steel bowl in there that can be taken out, cleaned individually, scrubbed. It's never going to rust. Again, these Nelson waters have a balance valve in them, and we'll show you exactly what that eventually looks like, okay? Pretty safe. They're all solid walls. Again, this is a stud barn, so generally we don't want that interaction for the most part between one stallion and the next. A lot of the times it's client stallions, and so again, usually works out better. And so, again, completely fine with the solid wall. The one thing I will tell you to pay attention to, and probably tough to see on camera, but if you look on that wall directly between that grain feeder and the water, you'll see, if you can notice, a little black spot. That black spot is actually not on the wall, it is a hole in the wall, okay? And so if you're going to do a cinder block wall, my advice to you is at least halfway up, 4 feet up, somewhere of that nature, you need to either do solid blocks, you need to fill those blocks with concrete, if they're hollow blocks, or you need to put an additional kick wall up. But you're going to have horses that are going to kick, okay? And if you put them in those stalls and they start kicking those hollow blocks all the time, they're going to knock holes in them, okay? And so we've started to deal with that issue. And so if we walk over to one of these other stalls, I'll show you what we've done to mitigate that, okay? And so, again, the best thing to do would be in the beginning to just simply put solid blocks in 4 feet up or something of that sort. And so if you look in this barn, or excuse me, this stall, you guys can pan all the way around. You can see this has become their wheelbarrow storage, and scale in here, pitchforks, everything else. Again, needing a storage area in many of these spaces, right? But they put basically a kick wall all the way around at a certain height so that horses don't punch through that hollow block. And so do be sure you try to avoid that in a barn, okay? What else? Any other impressions inside this barn? So we'll start to walk down a little bit. Again, I really do like the interlocking bricks. You can see one set of standing stocks. You want to put a stallion in here, groom them, bathe them, anything of that sort's easily accomplished there. We've got a scale. Again, we can frequently weigh these horses to look at their body condition score and adjust their feeding as needed, okay? Now, I'm going to move you around. And again, you can obviously pan wherever you want, but I'm looking at a whiteboard now that basically shows the layout of all the stalls inside this barn. And what they did I actually kind of like, okay? There are a number of runs in kind of a horseshoe shape all the way around this stallion barn, and there's a run associated with each one of these stalls. So we used to have it that the horses could go out during the day, come back in at night, but you have that option, okay? Right now they're all out all the time, okay? And then this is basically just a storage area, okay? You can never have too little storage inside, okay? You're going to go into the darkness for a second. And so here, again, still rubber floor. You can see feed bins in here. I see some senior, some impact, some storage, some halters. Each stud might have his own little storage cabinet up above. Pretty low ceiling in here. We probably could push this higher or even put a little bit of storage above this because the barn does have the height to allow. And then doors that would go to the outside if we need other access, okay? But again, we should have a storage area like this essentially in every single one of those barns for feed, supplies, grooming stuff, blankets, anything of that sort, okay? And so with that, walk you back out of here, and let's go over to one of the runs, and I will show you kind of maybe what you think of a place to keep one of those horses. Okay everyone, so I've got you at one of the outside runs. They're nearly all identical in size and layout in a horseshoe shape all the way around this stallion barn. You can pan 360 degrees right now and kind of look around and see the other runs. There's some heavy equipment out here as they're starting to renovate a few things. The only difference that some of these runs have, if you can tell off to the east, is some of them have run-in sheds in them, and then a couple that are right here in front of me do not have those run-in sheds, okay? A lot of our horses that are staying out all the time are in those run-in sheds. You can see these run-in sheds. What direction do they face? They're facing southeast, okay? Prevailing winds coming from the north-northwest, so our sheds face south or east, these southeast. So again, making sure that our horses are protected from those prevailing winds. And so just a dirt run, pipe fence, all very safe, happy with that. You want to make sure you have good runoff and drainage inside your runs. You don't want ponding of water. Get a little bit that might occur in some of these, so they're regrading some of that as we speak. They didn't used to have automatic waters in them, okay? They used to just simply be a water trough that was filled every so often. The water troughs are a pain, okay? They oftentimes don't get cleaned as frequently as they should. They build up algae. They're tough to then dump over and fill. They freeze in the winter unless you have tank heaters in them, but there's no power source out here. So then that becomes a whole nother added issue. So they've added automatic waters to these, okay? And I like the automatic waters that they added, okay? I'm going to give you a different perspective here. You guys can still pan all around and look where you want. But these are jug waters. The only thing different that I wish they would have done is I personally, and again, all personal preference, right? I personally would have placed that same jug water inside the pen with that flat back right up against the fence, okay? No horse is going to have any issues with that. They're not going to trip over them. They're plastic. Horses can navigate that pretty easily, okay? You're also talking about stallion paddocks that only have one horse in them at a time. Otherwise, I would tell you, don't put waters in a corner. You don't want it to be a congregation point where all of a sudden horses are fighting in that area of water. But again, you've only got one horse in here at a time. I would have put that water on the inside. Instead, they put it on the outside. They cut a hole in the fence, and now the horse has to duck down to a sense, especially these big horses sometimes, tough time, and then stick their head through and then drink out of that water. And so, again, I like the placement, I like the style of water, the jug water. They're good durable water. They got heating elements in them. They survived the Colorado winter. Only thing I would have done differently is place that water inside the actual run, okay? But overall, again, I like these runs. You guys can, again, pan all the way around. You can see across the road where all of that hay storage is. Again, that's one of those things that you got to think about on a facility. Where are you going to store your hay at? So it's all out of the elements, and again, stored there year-round, and as needed comes over to the reproductive lab here or over to the equine center. And so with that, hopefully you guys got a better idea, more of an in-depth look at starting to do a facilities assessment. What works, what doesn't work. You're not going to have a facility that maybe you take over where everything is perfect. You're always going to want to have changes that are going to be made and things that you want to modify, okay? But you need to break it down, look at it more in-depth, and maybe a new barn that you're going to build. What works, what doesn't work. Look at a lot of different examples. And so next week, we'll do a facilities assessment of the equine center, okay, and start to break down what works, what doesn't work. I'm happy to give you any budget figures, what certain things cost, but ask questions. And again, like I said, hopefully you are a little bit more well-versed in kind of the actual facility, the barns, the layout here at the Repro Lab. And so with that, thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.